Still in Kenya, 500 NGOs in Kenya have been deregistered and their accounts frozen over allegations of funding terrorism in the country. The decision comes after last year's terror attacks at the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi, in which 67 people died, and a series of attacks last month. Some of the NGOs have been deregistered for failing to file their audited reports as required by law. To tell us more about the deregistration, we are joined on the line by our East Africa correspondent, Ms. Sarah Kimani. Sarah, a very good afternoon to you. Once again, the deregistration of the NGOs must have caught the organizations unaware. Tell us more.
Well, they probably did not catch them unawares because there had been an advertisement in the daily newspapers here saying that they needed to file their returns. Probably the reason why it would catch them unawares is because it is the first time that the Kenyan government has taken such kind of action. Most of the times these warnings are never heeded and the government never follows up. So this was the first time that the Kenyan government seemed to stamp its foot and stamp its authority.
Sarah, what are the implications of this move by government?
Well, it is possible that some of them will lose, a lot of people will lose their jobs. But when you go through the list of those non-governmental organizations, it's probable that most of them were just briefcase organizations. So the registration will mean that if they had any form of income coming, whether locally or from abroad, then those streams of income will be cut because their assets are going to be frozen. They're saying that prosecutions will also begin. But most importantly is Kenyans will be waiting to see who the directors are of those 15 that are said to have been funding terrorist activities in Kenya and in the Horn of Africa region.
But Sarah, what about the communities or individuals that actually relied on these organizations? What happens to their aid now?
Well, what the government is saying is that those ones that are genuine and have been working, and once they send out appeals, then the government is willing to listen to them. However, the government is very clear that it is a requirement of the government, according to the NGOs regulations, that all charitable organizations should file their annual reports and their audited accounts to the board. For them, however, there seems to be, the greatest concern seems to be these 15 charitable organizations, which have said some of them to have probably even taken part in the funding of the 1998 bombing of the U.S. embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And so these investigations now have started to see who owns these 15 non-governmental organizations, and we understand that we should expect to see them in court soon.
But, sir, is there any truth in these claims that some of the NGOs were actually funding terrorism activities in the country?
It is difficult to tell now because during the press conference, we asked the board's executive director, Fazul Mohammed, to give us the names of these organizations, but he was adamant that investigations are still underway and that he would not reveal the names now, saying that it may cause the investigations maybe to be hampered, and he said it would also be a security risk. He did not name the non-governmental organizations, although we have a list of more than 500 non-governmental organizations, but it is difficult to point out from that list which of these are the 15 that he was talking about.
Thank you so much for that. That's Sarah Kimani live to us from Nairobi, Kenya, where certain NGOs have been deregistered after being suspected of funding terrorist missions.